now.
Okay. Welcome to the second installment of our podcast for the Fringe Methodologies book with Dr. Smolianov and Jed Smith. Welcome, guys. Thanks for getting back with me again. And we're going to kind of go into the next steps of the podcast. And I really appreciate both of you doing this.
Great.
So last week we kind of, we looked at an introduction to everything, introducing people to this idea, because I think we mentioned was that, this high performance model that you guys are discussing is not something that had really been prevalent in the United States ever. It was more of a Soviet birth, and then, maybe in some other countries, namely the East Germans kind of had a really good system in place as well in the high performance model. It's not been duplicated here yet. It's kind of getting like you kind of see some movement in that direction in the United States. A little, it's looser and a little disjointed, but you kind of can see that now. It looks like it a little bit more, but still nowhere near that level that we had seen with the Soviets by any stretch of the imagination. So what I want to do is kind of give more background into this, how was on that larger level, how was the high performance model, developed? So if you would, Jed and Dr. Smolianov, give me an idea on, give the listener an idea on the history of the high performance model, and then, how did this show itself in the early United States influence?
Joseph, it all kind of stems as far as the model and how it was evolved out of really Taylorism. Frederick Winslow Taylor in scientific management in the United States in the Industrial Revolution. In the business world, so basically, how do you control the process of designing and creating machinery, whether an automobile or whatnot, to get a better product? So think about, when we get into this, the athlete is what we're trying to develop and create. Okay, and this is where the Soviet Union took these concepts that we were using here, starting in the United States in the Industrial Revolution, to manufacture whatever, and we need a better product because it's very competitive. As far as in the business world, when you're creating any type of product, you're competing in the automobile industry against another automobile or whatever. They took those concepts and applied to sport, which is amazing. So what it is really controlling the process more stringently. So what's the process in manufacturing? You can break down all the components that go into like an automobile. So we have a group that is working on, let's see, the comfort of the ride, the suspension. You've got the engine. You have the luxury inside of the car as far as the interior, whatever. You break up, anything that you're manufacturing, and start to streamline and look at, how do we do this more efficiently? How do we create this better? And we're breaking up into components of this entire product. And so that's really the idea of scientific management, and then putting a little bit more management individuals in place so that they can oversee the process more, and then measure, instead of educated, just sitting here and using my own pre-existing notions of what we need to do. Let's actually measure and have standards in this area. What are the standards? Can we meet the standards? And in this area, and in this area, which we call in the high performance model, pillars of performance. We measure and create standards in each pillar of performance. Okay. But with this, it was a great business model because we still use it today. It's moved into hospitals. That was the first movement before sport, kind of, in the United States, was hospitals. But the Soviet Union literally went in and said, started applying it in sport at a very, very high level. And that's really where it kind of took off. And we're just now jumping in. Peter.
But one example of how we are jumping in is, for example, with the system of new periodization and more advanced periodization training systems, where in the Soviet Union, huge amounts of data, of results and physical indicators on each athlete have been collected and analyzed. So going beyond the theoretical periodization and conceptual periodization. Now, the Soviet Union in 1970s and 80s tried the new types of more individualized and more data-driven methods of prescribing training programs based on correlations of certain volumes of training and certain types of training with physiological parameters or a reaction of bodies of athletes in their performance indicators. So correlations have been developed, and therefore now a data-driven, data-informed training programs started to develop. Now it is available to high-performance athletes in the United States and former Soviet scientists and coaches who were operating, who developed these new systems of training beyond traditional, beyond classical periodization. They now are advising top swimmers, runners, triathletes out of University of Richmond, and there is an online program that we discussed in our book that is used. So there's a clear connection between what was done in the Soviet Union and what is done here. The system that was in place based on huge amount of information developed, collected on athletes, on their performance and their physical conditions, is now being added, mastered, advanced by both former Soviet, current Russian, Belarusian, the Ukrainian, Eastern European coaches, as well as top American coaches, that top university coaches who are in charge of some of the best swimmers, runners, and other endurance athletes are contributing to this system now. So the essence of this scientific management that Jeb just outlined is the data. And in the Soviet Union, these were buildings with full of computers where the data were kept. Right now, of course, it can be stored on smaller computers with small sizes. But at that time, these were huge buildings, and with calculators, electronic calculators, what they were called computers at early stages. So the fundamental requirement for this new high performance management system that is being emerging is the data. Mm-hmm. Collection of data on thousands of athletes and their programs and their physiological indicators. So that was the foundation and this is the example of how the scientific management that was in place in other industries became um, became the driver of high performance in the Soviet Union, and it's now becoming available for both elite and some of the mass participation athletes. You have to pay for it now. In the United States, it's available. You can buy this service. So you can plug in your athletes' parameters, physiological parameters, their physical indicators, their training programs, and the program that is developed on this huge amount of data is going to give you some advice based on the correlations made between performance and training programs and physiological parameters of many thousands of athletes in the Soviet Union, in America, in Italy, in many countries around the world where this system is being developed.
And you know, Peter, the parametric training, which you're referring to, if you go back and you look at one of the key concepts of scientific management is monitoring the daily procedures to a greater degree will direct the outcome, and it will really direct where you're going to go and your outcome. And using data-driven decisions, that was a big key to scientific management. Taking that concept and applying it to sport, like Peter's saying, you're monitoring in the daily procedures or what daily is going on with the athlete in their training, multiple factors, just like they were using in scientific management if you're building a car or whatever. And it's really monitoring those daily procedures to a greater degree. It's going to direct that outcome using data, using the science, and that's where the evolution of the high performance model got to the point of, like Peter's saying, parametric training. It's an evolution of periodization, using concepts of periodization, but going beyond. And it's just an evolution. And right now, it's starting to infiltrate into the United States at high levels, as Peter's explaining.
Yeah, and I hope in our next volume we would explain another even more personalized method that has been used, which is, for example, using a device used by cosmonauts, used by those who are preparing and are participating in space explorations. They are also high performance athletes. They are trained for performing in extreme conditions. And the device that they use, and the same device has been used by, for example, Russian pentathletes that I know, coaches that I personally know, is that the device is measuring your daily physical condition and your readiness to comply with your periodized training regime. And this device allows you to adjust even more fine-tune your training program based on your today's level of readiness to sustain, to survive the volume that you plan to accomplish in swimming, running, or other, to survive the weight that you are lifting today that might be bringing you to the extreme of your abilities. So again, these devices are being constantly advanced, and we. So I hope that we will describe the ones that are currently being used, that haven't been used much in past 10 years. But I think for us, in order to move ahead and give a fair reflection on the whole book, we need to say that this micro level training and recovery practices that are part of high performance management model, which is general training, sport-specific training, psychological training, medical services, diet, and the career and education services. They all have to be able to operate and be supported on the three levels, on not only on micro level, where your coach and your sports specialists are working with you, but also the coach, the manager, and other sports specialists must also zoom out and see the broader picture, which is the infrastructure that supports this micro level. This infrastructure, first of all, is your training centers that include all the facilities for training, for medicine, for good nutrition, for good rest, physiotherapy, career and education. Everything must be in these training centers provided. The system of competitions, how they're structured, how you provide competitive activities on the, not only on annual and monthly and weekly basis, but also on the maybe on a daily basis. So this integrated system of competitive activities is the very heart of this high performance management model, and it's not driven by profitable entertainment events. If you want to be a high performance, if you want to be a champion, and if you want to be the best in the world, it must be driven by the well-developed, periodized system of competitions that provide you gradual progression to this annual events that are the most profitable, the most important. But it starts with your daily training, with your weekly minor competitions, with your monthly events, and then 3 monthly, quarterly events, and then your annual events, and then at Olympic levels, your Olympic Games, that is your ultimate goal. But your competition system is part of this meso-level infrastructure that is necessary for good implementation of micro-level practices. And another important component of meso-level is your intellectual services infrastructure that provides you a sophisticated, advanced services that are education, science, medicine, philosophy, and promotion is part of this. So this integrated meso level is critical for successful high performance management, and also macro level. What macro level is your it sounds like administration and organization, but it's also critically important for every coach that operates on micro level, because without good partnerships on the macro level, no program is going to be able to support good services to even intermediate level athletes, and no elite athletes are going to be developed.
Yeah,
so and macro level is your partnerships with all possible supporting organizations, and your very well developed financial support that is balanced between your elite and your mass participation athlete support, so that you have a reserve, you have sufficient number of competitive athletes who support your elite athletes. Mm-hmm. There are quite a lot of examples of how this has been implemented, and we published on this in our other articles with Jed on how it's done at University of Northern Iowa, for example, right?
Yeah, and Peter, I'll add a little bit here, Joseph, as well, because we actually are applying these concepts in a high-performance director setting at University of Northern Iowa. For example, when Peter said being able to zoom out to see the big picture and make the relationships with outside resources to get financial help in order to be able to support the micro level. You have to be able to understand the micro level, but if you don't understand the macro level, you aren't going to be able to get the resources to supply at the micro level the technology, whether supplementation, nutrition, to the athletes to develop the product that we're talking about in the scientific management concept. So, for example, a real life application of this would be us teaming up with the medical entity in town, Cedar Valley Medical Specialists. And with that in mind, we took a technology that's being used in the NFL Combine. We're actually the first university in the U.S. to use this technology, which is called CRT, Cost Reduction Technologies. This technology is used in the NFL Combine. Every single athlete goes through and gets tested. It's isokinetic testing to look at the joints, and you're looking unilaterally throughout the body to find if there's some type of deficiency, where there was an injury, pre-existing injury, why they use it, and it's the only real testing that can be held up in a court of law in this regards. It's not subjective testing, it's objective data, and you'll actually pinpoint and find where there might be a pre-existing injury. Why does the NFL care about that? Bottom line, I hate saying this, but cost reduction technologies, you might not have to pay that athlete as much when they're drafting because he's damaged, he's injured. Well, the CRT technology is used in workers' comp claims. So this injured individual is collecting workers' comp. They test, they can find out if it's a real injury or when they can return back to work. So we took this concept and this idea, and we worked with the hospital to be able to work with CRT technologies, which they have this in a physical therapy setting in clinics to be able to determine workers' comp claims, right? So we brought the CRT technology here into our weight room, had a strength coach get trained in on it. 100%, that strength and conditioning coach gets paid by the medical entity, finds pre-existing injuries with all of our athletes that come into University of Northern Iowa, refers those athletes to the specialists, the medical specialists that can help them. So they get their kickback from the referrals. Obviously, it's medical attention, medical service. So we have a full-time strength and conditioning specialist that works and coaches paid for 100% by an outside medical entity, Cedar Valley Medical Specialists. And it's phenomenal. So now we're not looking at trying to, cut this athlete's pay at all. We're looking at it in a different sense. We're looking at it as we need to find out, what is wrong with this athlete. And now we can customize, make adjustments, modifications to any training so that we can get this athlete on par and balanced so that they hopefully don't get injured. But we also have baseline data. If an athlete does get injured, now we know where they need to be, where we can get them to return to play. Now we're publishing 2 articles on this. That's what Peter was referring to, because what we're finding is most times these athletes, if without this type of testing, there's pressures to go play. Most times those athletes get injured, re-injured, because they want them on the field maybe too early. Well, now we know a safe zone because we're getting a great pool because we test all of our athletes. So we're getting real training studies with our athletes that we can actually now help benefit all collegiate athletes and mid-major programs and so forth with a new financial model to be able to help put in a new strength coach in place and help benefit our athletes. So what that is right there is a real life example of understanding at the macro level making the connections and the partnerships in the greater community with outside entities in order to service and create a return on investment for both parties. So both sides have gain. Peter?
And at meso level, you are providing your athletes with the most advanced medical equipment, medical devices that make their performance better and their health better, right?
Absolutely.
So another UNI example of working at macro level and providing meso level infrastructures, and then therefore enhancing the micro level services is your partnership with U.S. Army, with the new facilities that you're building and new equipment that you're bringing in.
Absolutely.
To train the military. So do you want to speak about this as well?
Yeah, we're working with. So I don't know, Joseph, if you're familiar with the new Army combat fitness testing that's coming out, but they've revamped. Really, they've had in place the same fitness test for approximately the last 40 years, and it hasn't been changed. Well, there's a problem because culturally, our American society that we live in is changed from 40 years ago. Kids are way more sedentary. They really aren't used to being outside as much. Think of the last 40 years, how things have changed in our culture. So they have a problem right now in the all branches of the military. Is they can't find the talent. It doesn't exist anymore in the U.S. to field the U.S. military because kids can't make it through basic training anymore without injuries. They're lower limb injuries from hiking, rucksacks, jogging, things like that. Basic training injuries where prior to this current generations coming through, we grew up running outside, playing, jumping. We could handle the shearing forces and stress of constantly being on our feet. It's really difficult. The U.S. Army has 1.2 million servicemen and women, and to keep that coming in is very difficult. So we have a problem around the United States. We now have to build talent in a different way because it's not readily available. So through things like the Army ROTC and in universities, we have to actually train individuals to help the cause. And so the Army's looking at building strength and conditioning facilities. They've already revamped and they have a great plan, multiple tier level. They're trying to implement really a high performance model concept at multiple levels, trying to look at fielding the military. So one of those is at universities, recruiting, Army ROTC candidates that get scholarships to be in a university, but in that university, they're actually being trained in a different way. And we just we're wrapping up right now at University of Northern Iowa. This is literally going to be the most high-tech and advanced strength and conditioning center in the entire United States for any college ROTC program in America. It's phenomenal. I was just over there today. We're putting the finishing touches on it. So it looks like a collegiate, high-level, Division I strength and conditioning center, but it's for Army, ROTC. These are popping up all over in Army bases. Tactical strength and conditioning is going through the roof. We're also looking at outdoor strength and conditioning equipment that's mobile units to be able to bring outside to help at the macro level, meso and micro level. Obviously, we have to get to the micro level, but we're looking at infrastructure, facilities, coaching, and we're teaming up as a university with athletics, sport, and with the military. So I don't know if Peter, if that's what you're looking for, but it's pretty exciting.
And if you look at high performance management practices around the world, this partnership with the military has been perhaps most advanced and provided perhaps the most sophisticated infrastructures, facilities, services, and micro level services to athletes in any kind of country. And it's very, I think it's very indicative of high performance model. Does not matter economy, type of economy. It doesn't matter the type of political system. Culture doesn't matter. That's very curious, very interesting characteristic of high performance management model, that you take countries of Western Europe and you will find the best practices examples of military, paramilitary, security forces, partnering with sporting organizations and developing, helping them to develop top class programs, facilities, training centers, and athletes. You look at China, you will find the same thing. You look at any type of country, any type of socio-economic and political system, you will find examples of this kind of partnership.
So, yeah, sport and military.
It is.
And I was going to say, the best example, the Soviet Union developed in the sports school system, and we could get into we're going to go down a rabbit hole if we go here, Joseph, because Peter, grew up in a sports school, and it's how it's broken up in the Soviet Union. The former Soviet Union, sport and military go hand in hand, and one hand feeds the other. And so that's what Peter's saying, is it's all over the world. And so having a partnership at UNI where we're actually looking at military and sport working together, it's nothing new, is what Peter's saying. Correct, Peter? That's kind of what you're getting
been
at.
Around for a long time.
Yeah.
Nothing from the ancient times of Greece and Sparta, when Sparta, as being the most probably well-known high-performance athlete producing country of ancient world, because of their military practices. But I think what is also important for us to understand here is that there are opportunities for further advancement of this that exist. There are great opportunities for further growth for example, in partnerships with police at state and local levels in every country, where social community well-being, community safety, community health, and reduction of antisocial behavior can be achieved for everywhere in the world, including the United States, by better, closer, and deeper partnerships with, for example, police, and implementation of world's best practices that we touch upon in our book on high performance management model entails. It includes, it demands this. So we're giving some prompts and hope that in the future we might have more of those. Some prompts to for coaches to have better community outreach and develop more and better, deeper, longer partnerships with broader spectrum of organizations for the benefits of both community, these organizations, and their sport clubs, their sport teams.
You know, and I want to add a little something there, Joseph, because he had some great points in there. When you start thinking about police, military, you look at space exploration, where's all the technology in tactical professions and elite sport? So they tie in. All that filters down into even general fitness later, because people are looking at performance. So at the highest levels of performance, if it's police, if it's military, you know, whether it's nutrition, technologies, where is that stuff evolving in to get an edge, to get a competitive edge, or space exploration? You know, NASA, the cosmonauts, it doesn't matter. They're around the world looking at how do we get to perform at a higher level. And so that's where this integration of military and sport. What are you guys doing? What are you doing? Can we see? Can we use? Can we utilize it? But then you go down to, like, at the micro level in communities, the Police Athletic League was famous in the United States for developing youth sports in cities, where you have police officers coaching in community centers and so forth. And I was involved in that up in Minneapolis years ago in the Community Olympic Development Program. So funding comes through the Police Athletic League, the PAL, and the Community Olympic Development Program from the national office at the USOC, and working with community leaders and coaches, and at the grassroots level, developing athletes. It's a high performance model in a way, and it's an evolution that needs to still be thought about. And how do we integrate everything together to get to high level performers and finding these athletes? So
I think in our book we always in every section we try to give some prompts and some ideas to those who might be able to develop this at local level. We give examples of how this particular practice works at top elite athlete level, but we also try to prompt some ask some questions and prompt some actions so that this practice goes down to the masses. Here in the United States, the Army does provide a very good program for athletes, and it goes back to Forrest Gump times when he was playing ping pong in China. He was being a soldier in the U.S. Army. That's when a very intense development of U.S. Army top athlete program was taking place, and it might be funny that you play ping pong as being a serviceman, but only if you are. It is. I mean, you'll be laughing at it only if you do not have a very good vision for the future. Now you can be a synchronized swimmer competing for the United States and being able to serve in U.S. Army, receive support as elite athlete. If you are really good manager of this program, you will find career even for a synchronized swimmer or rhythmic gymnast, female athletes in the Army. They will be able to be even the part of the SEALs squads if you develop them very well. We're trying to help those units to think broader. So at the moment, the unit exists and it's very efficient, but it's mostly effective for those who are directly related to the military: shooters, wrestlers, combat sports that are
swimmers.
Huh?
Swimmer, swimming is also important. Wrestling, yeah. Shooting.
Yeah, yes, but all Olympic sports pretty much are now part of this program, and all associations are now charged with the not only with elite development but with also mass development of athletes, and that's where the military can help and develop better partnerships with associations, because in every local community, most Olympic sports have potential to improve the pool of potential military personnel. As Jed said, it is a demand now, and this is what is happening now, is that from the top, from servicing the top elite athletes, these army and Olympic programs are emerging as developers of mass participation and mass fitness. Again, nothing new about it. During Cold War and President Kennedy's presidency, it was being developed at much greater pace and much more intensively than it is developed now. It can happen, and it can happen much better, and we can have much better results for both at a community health level, and as a result of this, at Olympic performance level. So if the Soviet Union is replaced now by China, China is the main challenger of the United States now on both economic and military levels, and politically, economically, and militarily. China is becoming another USSR kind of competitor for the United States. If we do not put more efforts, if the United States is going to be sitting and celebrating its successes now at a top Olympic level and at community health level, China is going to be better and more powerful very soon. So what we're helping all countries to do is to advance their socio-economic system through, and the health system through sport, through best practices of elite sport programs. So again, at UNI, it's happening. I hope in our next volume, we will give examples that are real life examples and serve as evidence for integrated high performance management implementation that is systematically managed at micro level, meso level, and macro level as one integral process.
Joseph, that was one question we had, and you got one question in, but there's a lot.
We got a lot of mileage out of it, though.
We got a lot of mileage out of that one question.
Yeah, right. We got 45 minutes, I think, out of one question.
And you know what? that might be a great stopping point now.
Yeah.
And I think we just continue on with some of the next questions before because we can literally keep doing this for years. Because it's great stuff, and what we're trying to do, what Peter and I were discussing, is really trying to get people to understand a big overview of what's going on here, get a little understanding of the macro, the meso, the micro level, because this book is all the micro level, and it's really just the little teeny things, but these are kind of meaningless, as Peter was saying, unless you understand how to get the resources and where are you going with all this, So
I think that,
zoom out.
I think that, one of the books that I published from it was originally written in '87 was The Secrets of Soviet Sports Fitness and Training, and then Secrets of Russian Sports Fitness and Training. Kind of, that was the introduction to that idea, the system. Like, we didn't have anything like that in the United States.
Right.
Our Olympic committee did not. We don't have a national Olympic program, if you will, in any way that resembles what the Soviets did. It's very loose, disjointed. We don't have a national sprint coach, or a department for that. And so I think that the thing that is fascinating and going forward that, for you guys to elucidate is that, they were organized in every facet in the sense that the coach was kind of like this coordinator of all of the other things, that all the other specialists, as the needs arose, or as as helps right in the beginning. But the coach was very educated in a bunch of different fields. He may not, a lot of times he was a PhD in coaching,
Right.
where he had requisite knowledge in a lot of different fields. He might not have been the expert, but he had really good knowledge. So he could actually ask good questions. Because I think one of the things that is missing today is not only does the coach not know the answer, he doesn't even know what the question is in the United States. Like, he doesn't know who would I talk to about this? Like, who would be an expert that could tell me why this is happening? Like, why would a guy get injured so easily? What's his problem? What maybe it's his exposure to loads, maybe he's not as resilient, whatever the case may be. But like what you were talking about earlier, you're measuring that, and you got a guy who is an expert in that, can interpret the data to tell you, okay, here's what we're looking at.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
You have to be knowledgeable. Like, a high performance director is a great component in the high performance model, meaning that there's a director, and what that typically is now, we look at the English Premier system, who's really adopted it to a high level, and up in Canada, Australia, other areas of the world, in the UK, and it's implemented over here. The NBA was really one of the first, pro sports organizations to start adopting it. But having a high performance director, someone that's very knowledgeable in all those pillars of performance,
right.
The coach gets to coach. They understand the strategy and the tactics and the strategy and the sport, and they can recruit. They do what they need to do. But you have this high performance director that's overseeing the processes around that helps the coach, because the coach can't be all knowledgeable. Neither can the high performance director. You have to hire the best people and make sure you're measuring, and what you measure gets done. And so making sure that you're measuring and showing the standards, and then continuing to evolve and create best practice. So this is the best now. This is the best we know now. How are we evolving it? And it's controlling the process. The coach can coach, the coach can recruit, but all these other now components, because sport has evolved so greatly, it's a lot more difficult now than just one guy trying to know everything.
Yeah, exactly. I think what it is that, I've had this talk with sport coaches many times, which is try to stay in your lane, in the sense of, if you're the sport coach, you're not, like, let's say it's high school football. You're not a physiologist. You don't know conditioning.
Mm-hmm.
You don't know it. It's just not your area, right? And so, but how cool would it be if you had an expert in physiology who could help guide that process for you, right?
Right.
Because the one of the things that I see, let's just say at the high school level, that preseasons are 2 weeks long, and so the common idea is, we got to get them in shape in 2 weeks. Well, anybody who knows anything about physiology knows that's not possible. It's not possible. Right. If the guy wasn't in shape 2 weeks ago, he's not going to be in shape today. The only thing that you could do is hurt him, which happens a lot. This is why you see a lot of non-contact injuries, like maybe in the preseason in the NFL. Why? Well, because they weren't ready, and you threw them into the,
yeah.
You know what I mean? Like you are presuming knowledge about something you really don't know anything about, And it's not the coach's fault. I think part of it, maybe he feels pressured to know, but the fact is, why would you know? You know, you're a sport coach. If your plumber comes over, he doesn't know anything about your electrical work. I mean, that's not his job. He knows his job, right? And so I think the thing that is number one is that understanding that and getting that team effort, like you guys are talking about, this where everybody brings to the table their expertise, and then the fringe part being what's the bleeding edge of that particular field, so that this athlete is getting the very best of each component. He's getting the best intervention in psychology. He's getting the best intervention in nutrition, you know, in sports med or any of the different things. He's getting the best of all those worlds. That's the ideal, right? That's the thing that we're looking for, is that the athlete is never working under less than the best circumstances to maximize, you know, his performance. And I think that's, you know, what the book, the crux of the book is about. Like, look, we want to go out and look and see what the best of the best is in every narrow little area, bring it all together under one roof, and have this athlete be directed by an expert, you know, in the use of those.
I'll sum it up. A good way to kind of finish this one off is an old Bear Bryant quote. So Bear Bryant was asked by a reporter once, you know, what's your secret? Why are you so good? Why are you guys always so good? And he goes, honestly, because I never hired anyone that wasn't smarter than I was.
Exactly.
He's finding, okay, this guy's great. Boom. This guy. Boom. This guy. These are, you know, and I don't need to know everything, but I need to know that this guy's really good. I've never hired anyone that wasn't smarter than I was.
Yeah.
That's the secret to my success.
That's absolutely the case. Look, you know, it's impossible that you could be the expert in 100 different areas.
Right.
It's not possible. So you have to just go out, you know, you want your personal physician to be the best physician, right? I mean, at least you hope so, you know.
And that they're practicing the best practice. It's like, so
using the best methods. You want, you know, all the people that you have in your life, you want them to be, you want your mechanic to be the best mechanic, and he's using the best practices. You know, anybody who does work for you, you want that. So I think, exactly right. You want very smart people who are experts in their area, and then you just need one person, the high performance person, to understand how to apply it in the specific situations as it comes up. I think that's the other rate limiting factor.
Let's monitor the process, and let's make sure that we're evolving in each area. And that's
they like
get to where you need to get.
The one thing that I've heard, and Peter, I'm sure you probably could verify this, is that all the scientists, you know, the guys who are specialists in the field would always say, well, you know, the coach will know what to do, because they're presuming that the coach is competent enough to take the information from the specialist, understand it at least well enough to apply it appropriately. Because a lot of people will ask a real specific question about some complex scientific concept, and the scientist will always say, well, I don't know, it depends. But a good coach will know. And that's where that relationship between the high-level coach or performance director has this other relationship with the expert, and can take that data or the information, expertise, and then take it and apply it in specific situations. I think that's one thing that really is a critical component. And like you said, maybe something to end on is that guy's, it's so important because he has to actually put legs on things and make it work in the practical setting. And so, maybe that's something that we can talk about next time. But I think that, you know, this is a critical idea to set this all up, because it still isn't fully functioning in the United States in the ideal way. Still got a ways to go with that. And so, you know, obviously you guys will be able to talk about that next time. How can we get that integrated into a real live situation optimally? Yeah.
All right. Thanks, Joseph.
Thanks, guys. I appreciate your time as always.
Yep.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Until next. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
All right. I'm going to end this, guys.